The future classic anthem Careless Whisper was one of George and Andrew's first compositions.
I used to stand and wait at two or three places, for the bus that would take me to my evening job. But when I was waiting for the bus, I would just add a little bit day by day to this particular song. I am never going to tell anybody what the original words were, but I remember the original words that were the sax line, because the sax line wasn't initially a sax line, it was a melody, and it was supposed to be the chorus to the song. And I remember where I was, the exact moment. I remember getting onto that particular bus and paying my money. I remember sitting on the top deck of the bus, on the front seat, on the left-hand side. I remember all of it. Bizarre. I remember deciding, no, that shouldn't be a melody that's sung, that should just be played. By the time I played it to Andrew, Andrew said, well, I've got these 4 chords and I think they fit with what you're singing. So basically we'd come up with roughly the same chord pattern. That was the bizarre thing as well. And I think we finished it together, and Andrew wrote the little guitar intro bit. That was Andrew. But it was definitely finished together and put together very slowly. But I remember when it was finished, walking down the street with Andrew one day when we were bunking off school, going back to his house. I remember on the way saying, you know what, I've been listening to that song, and I said to him, I don't know who'll do it, and I don't know whether I'll be good enough to sing it, and I don't know whether we'll do it as a duo, I don't know what's going to happen to it, but that is a number 1 song. I remember saying that to him so clearly.
More on that song soon. The second single from Make It Big was to become the most significant turning point in George Michael's career. Careless Whisper, which had been sitting on the back burner for 2 years, would be released in the UK as a solo single, a clear signal of what was to come for our intrepid artist.
I remember there was a point in the show where he would sing Careless Whisper, and Shirley and I would be backstage, getting our Mars bars, getting our sort of sugar hit, and we were very unglamorous, Shirley and I have to tell you, and we'd be standing sort of at side of stage watching him, and the lights would go down, and they'd put a stool out, and he'd sort of start sitting there singing Careless Whisper, and we look at each other going, he's a star, he glowed.
We knew that Careless Whisper was the big single right from the beginning of Wham, but it was a matter of when that would be released. I had gone to record it with Jerry Wexler, Aretha Franklin's producer, and Ray Charles' producer, and his session guys, who were called the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, and they had the most stunning repertoire of work that you could imagine, and I was absolutely shitting myself. I would stand there ready to do my I feel so unsure, and he'd say into the headphones, Jerry would say, now just remember, George, that's where Aretha Franklin sang Respect. Or, now just remember, George, that's where Ray Charles sang When a Man Loves a Woman. And you're like, oh, thank you. Right, just before you do your weedy little thing that you wrote on the bus a couple of years before. So it was a bit limp. It was a bit of a limp version. It was mostly down to me. So I came home telling everyone about this fantastic version of Careless Whisper. And people were a bit like, In other words, we liked the demo better, all right?
At that time, Martin Nelson was head of promotions at CBS in the UK.
George brought the demo into the office of Careless Whisper up at CBS. And we sat round and listened to it, and it was just fantastic. I mean, it really got everybody, in the heart, and we knew that that was a seriously successful record in the making. And then he went off, and he went across to America. And it was produced in America, and, with a very lush production. And he brought it back and played it to us, and, he must have wondered what on earth was going on, because our faces told the story. We didn't really like to say that, you've actually ruined it. But the whole feeling of that original demo had gone. The American production had taken over to such an extent that the heart of the record was lost. And he didn't say anything, but he saw, what the reaction was, and said, I'm going to have to do something about this. And he went off, and I have enormous respect for George in the fact that he came back, having produced Careless Whisper more or less from the original demo, which we'd all heard and loved. And of course, it was hugely successful.
George's publisher and friend, Dick Leahy.
it wasn't the right record. I mean, one of the greatest producers and one of the greatest men in the music industry, and it didn't work. Sometimes it doesn't.
So I re-recorded Careless Whisper, and thank Christ I did, because I really had to be pushed into that. I was determined to respect Jerry Wexler's version, and it was perfectly nice, but in retrospect, I think we put it on a B-side. In retrospect, it sounded like Radio 2 then, which was a very different animal. And everyone was like, oh, it's a bit Radio 2, which in those days was not a compliment. These days, it's funny how life turns around, isn't it? Funny how life turns around.